The voice of the Jays, John Bishop, joins us from 1620 The Zone to talk about the entire season that's coming up. We preview South Dakota. We talk about the trip to Spokane, and we look ahead to the Big East and more. It's the Roll Jays podcast right here on the Big East Energy Network. Like and subscribe today.
Heads up, it's the Roll Jays podcast, the voice of the Creighton basketball fan. With your hosts, Jimmy Allen and Casey Matthews. Join the crew and meet CU players, coaches, and a whole lot more. Now, the Roll Jays podcast. Here's Jimmy Allen.
Welcome into the Roll Jays podcast, brought to you by Pepper Jack's Grill and Pyramid Contractors. Jimmy Allen, Casey Matthews, and some refer to him as the voice of the Jays. John Bishop now joins us on the Roll Jays podcast. John, thanks for taking time out of your very busy, hectic schedule before basketball season starts to be here.
It is, man. It is good to see Jimmy and Casey. Yeah, it is. It's the nice thing is we kind of ease into it. I know I say ease into it, yet we've had 2 exhibition games. We've never done 2 exhibition games since I started calling these games. But yeah, to have a game and then take 6 days off and then have another game. Yeah, I'm kind of glad it goes this way because it's hard for me to adjust to seasons. It's hard for me to go from jeans season to short season and then back again. And it's hard for me to adjust to, it feels like football just started. And now all of a sudden here's basketball and there's like more overlap than there's ever been before. So it takes me a little longer to get adjusted. But man, once that ball goes in the air, it's going to be like, okay, here we go. It's like riding a bike.
Well, I'm a Dolphins fan, John. So football season's over, usually week 1. So I still get a pretty long break in between seasons.
I needed to be calling games back in the 90s when the Rams were out of it by week 5. Where it's just like football. Who needs it?
But what is it for you, John? Because I think it's cool, right, to talk to you, and we'll get into the team and the opponents and all that in a little bit. But like, I think it's fun to talk to guys like you who there's nobody that has seen more Creighton Bluejay basketball than you. I mean, you've been calling games, But if you think about it,
because you're so old, John. That's what.
Yeah, because you're so old.
I am.
But especially with working, like getting to work with a guy like Mac, who is just, I mean, he's the best. We all know that. But like, it's you just have a really good perspective. So this time of year, we're undefeated. What are you most excited about? Like, and I don't mean necessarily this season, but just in general. Like, what is it that you usually these 48 hours before tip that you'll spend your time thinking about and being excited about?
It's the unknown, and I don't mean to answer that because you said beyond this particular team.
Yeah,
but I go into that every year, even in years, like last year where you had 2 of the most important guys back, or I think of years. Where, make like 1920, when you had Tyshawn and you had, Zagorowski and you had, all these guys that were there the previous year. There's always that unknown because you never know how people are going to react to a new situation or how they're going to react to whatever they did the year before. With that team, it was, all right, well, how do we, build off what we were doing? With last year's team, it's, is this going to be enough? Can we mix in the right pieces? Then you look at the schedule. Then you look at, and now with how college basketball and college sports in general, teams can change like that. Yeah. UConn and St. John's are going to be radically different roster-wise than they were last year, but yet they're picked top 10 in the country because, they go out and they reload. We went out and reloaded. So the mystery is even larger. And you just don't know how people are going to react in the moment. I mean, it's one thing, and, I don't know, I guess we'll find out how beneficial it was to have a scrimmage against Iowa State and a scrimmage against Colorado State. I think it's a good thing, but you don't know when the real games begin, when they actually matter. And I'm not saying the guys weren't out there trying, because I think they were. I mean, if we remember back to last year, I was kind of surprised at how that Purdue scrimmage went. It was
Sure.
like, man, this feels like a regular game.
The crowd made it feel that way too.
And it did. And Iowa State, Iowa State was playing it out like it was a regular game. They're starters, and they're not as deep as we are, but it'd be interesting to see how, the additional scrimmages, open scrimmages, because I know obviously there was closed ones in the past, are going to impact how teams start a season. I think one of the reasons why the NFL is so wonky, especially in recent years, is because none of these starters ever play. Matthew Stafford wasn't in a preseason game. None of the frontline guys played in the preseason, and so once you get to the real season, it's like they haven't played in 9 months because they haven't played in 9 months. And I think it kind of lends itself to some real weirdness, but because these guys have had an opportunity to play in game-like situations, I wonder if things will get off to, I don't want to say a smooth start because it's never smooth,
right?
But a more organized start, where maybe the tolerance level for some of the simple mistakes is less because you've had opportunities to work them out against other people. I guarantee you, Mac's probably going, man, what are we going to do about this matchup? And what are we going to do about this matchup? So it's probably not going to feel like it to him. But I do wonder if it's going to look that way at times to some of these teams because they've had a chance to actually, go up against other people in front of a crowd, which is different than when you would go to Ames and just play in an empty gym. When you're playing in front of people and people can actually watch you and people can actually judge you, I think it changes the way you play.
Casey and I have been talking about the differences between this year's team versus the past. And obviously, basically, since you started calling basketball games for Creighton, Ryan Kalkbrenner's been there. He's not there this year. But the difference is they have a ton of experience that comes in. The one guy that we feel has stood out the most is Nick Graves. And I think a lot of people seeing it the way, Ryan Nemhard in his freshman year struggled, the way Stephen Ashworth in his first year struggled, expected a point guard in the system to struggle a little bit. Obviously, it's scrimmages and competition hasn't been the tippy top, but it kind of feels like Creighton's point guard is already adjusted to the system faster than ever before, possibly. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I can see it. He had to average the most points on the team, in the two scrimmages. And so, just like I said, there were benefits to it. I think there can be drawbacks too, because it might lend itself to some unrealistic expectations. You're exactly right. Stephen Ashworth didn't turn into the Stephen Ashworth we got last year until we were damn near 2/3 of the way through the season.
Yeah.
Ryan Nemhard, R2 was kind of a natural at that spot. Maybe it didn't take quite as long for him, and because that team was so young that somebody had to be the guy. At least with the team a couple of years ago, you had Kalk, you had Baylor, you had guys who could kind of carry the load, and certainly in a guy like Baylor, who's as close to a 5 tool player as maybe we had, he could handle the rock and do some different things. So I do wonder, if there's going to be, because he played pretty well in those exhibitions, if there's going to be maybe an inflated sense of what he can be early on. His offense at Charlotte was nothing like this offense. Mm-hmm. This offense is fast. This offense, you're thinking on your feet. This offense is about getting that ball popping and moving. And while it's looked like Creighton offense, at least, in the times the limited times we've had a chance to see it. Again, it's different when the games actually count, and that mistake you made isn't just going to be something that you can put on film and work out in practice. Now that mistake you made is going to go against you if it is the difference between winning a game and losing a game. So I'll be curious to see, and I mean, we go right from the start of the season right into the fire. 6 days later, you're traveling to Gonzaga, where there's a lot less room for error. And I would even caution folks, there's not a whole lot of room for error on Wednesday night, because South Dakota is going to play fast, and South Dakota is aggressive, and South Dakota, for a team like they are, and they're going through changes as well, but they feel pretty confident that defensively they can press you, they can get up under you and make you uncomfortable. So this is going to be an interesting check for Nick. I am encouraged by what I see, but I think I may even have to temper, some of my expectations of, hey, what I saw against the Rams and against the Cyclones might not necessarily be what we get when the real stuff happens, and how he's going to respond to all of that. Plus, you're trying to nail down your rotations. I mean, Mac is stressing out about, how am I going to mix these 12 guys in? In years past, it seemed like that rotation got real short real quick.
Has to.
And now it's going to be a lot harder to shrink, 12 guys that could play down to 9 or 10 guys that can play. And then how do you balance, the guys that aren't seeing as much time on the floor?
You've mentioned a word that I think is just very topical this time of the year. It's expectations. What are your expectations for this team, maybe before we saw the scrimmages, and how have they changed afterwards?
That's a good question because, when Mac and the coaches put this roster together, and I looked at all the experience coming in, and I looked at the guys and where they had been before, and a lot of them at the high power 5 level, and while I knew, you're replacing a generational guy in Ryan Kalkbrenner, you looked at it initially and said, oh man, they're reloading, and how can these guys not be good? And now, you see what everyone else is doing, and you see, and you remember how much of an adjustment there can be. It can take time in this system. Guys are a lot better their second go around, especially their third go around, than in their first go around. Well, for Harper, for Schwartz, for Graves, for Dix, for Owen Freeman, this is all their first time in this system. And while you know that there is an adjustment period, you also know that you're up against the clock. I mean, Dix is a senior and Graves is a senior. These guys didn't come here to, play out the string. They came here because they saw an opportunity to continue their career and to play in big games. And they've got to all do it in 1 year. There's not going to be a second year. So, what kind of pressure do they put on themselves to get up to speed faster? And sometimes you just got to let it come naturally. You can't force it. You can do the film study, you can go to practice, you can work with your teammates, but it's different when you're actually in game action and you're going up against other teams. So, the expectation for me, I mean, obviously it's going to the NCAA tournament, finishing top 3 in the Big East, which I think are pretty noble. And then you weigh it against, the recent expectations. And I know last year you played a number 1 seed and all, but you couldn't help but feel disappointed that you weren't playing a second weekend. Now, back in the day, a second weekend was a dream. Well, now it's a reality, and it's now become an expectation. So how do you handle that, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you've now taken that step that Jays fans forever have been wanting to see. Now you've taken that step 3 times. And now the step is, well, there's a third weekend of this tournament too. Yeah. And I'm not saying that is that's a reasonable expectation, but I guarantee you it's a goal. Yeah. And
especially with the way this coaching staff has gone all in for this roster, and the fact that the time is ticking on Mac's career now too. And it feels like the university is kind of giving him everything he can do to get to that third weekend.
Yeah. I think it's what's fun about this team. What's interesting is go back and look at years past. Yes, we know Kalkbrenner has been there, but there's been other guys, because Kalk wasn't always a vocal leader. I still wouldn't consider him a vocal leader at all. He led by example. But you had a Stephen Ashworth that was vocal. You had a Ryan Hawkins that was vocal. A Baylor Shireman that was vocal, right? So when you brought in these new pieces, you had guys that could in some ways take them under their wing and show them the way, right? Like you could go in the locker room after practice, after Mac gets on you practice and go, hey, it's okay. Like that Mac's doing that because he cares. You don't really have that now. So I'm really interested. Like, yes, you have Jackson and Ty, who unbelievable job this offseason, taking that leadership role and helping with the recruiting piece. But I'm really interested to see like who steps up as the leader. We did a show, our top issues we're really excited to see. And that was one of mine. It's like, who's going to be the leader? You are sitting there right next to the bench. What have you seen so far that maybe can give you some kind of glimpse into who will end up leading this team?
That is the $1 million question, because Jackson by nature isn't the most vocal guy in the world. But when you look at all the preseason lists and all that other stuff, because he had the great year last year as a freshman, he's naturally a guy you pinpoint. You look at a guy who's longer in the tooth, like Jason Green, who I think, at least in the times I've seen him, has taken a big step up, right?
Huge.
He's had incremental growth the first couple of years, but I think this year he's taken a huge step up. But is he a vocal guy? He's a great speaker. He's a great interview. He's a thoughtful kid. He's a smart basketball player, but he's not a get in your face or jump on you. Honestly, the guy with probably the personality for it is Ty Davis, but is Ty Davis that kind of guy? Because he's still going to be your number 2 point guard.
Yeah.
He obviously still has a lot of growth to go. So, who is that? I don't see it being Isaac Trout. Isaac's not, particularly vocal at times. So it's going to be one of those things where you hope that somehow collectively it kind of becomes a thing where guys aren't afraid to push each other a little bit and maybe kind of lead. I don't know if you can have a team of all guys who lead by example like Kalkbrenner, but it may have to be, because there's just not that Baylor Shireman-like personality or that Marcus Zagorowski-like personality that's just like, right there and working you hard. And I know that's something else that has concerned Mac this year. So, I mean, it's a long-winded way to answer the question. I don't think there is that guy right now. Maybe when I've been trying to avoid this whole time saying when the bullets are flying, because it's not war. But when the stuff starts hitting the fan, maybe that will bring more out as people realize, more needs to be brought out. But it's one of those things that, may have to just develop over time, and you hope that something happens organically. But I think right now the answer to that question is,
well, let me give you my thoughts here, John, too, because I was wanted to see if you would get there. I think this is another part of Mac that's just really smart in what he's done. Look at his staff: Mitch Ballock, Trey Ziegler. Look at the GAs, right? You got Jeff Griselle as a GA. You got Justin Carter as a GA. You've got a lot of former players that are on his staff. You got a lot of young guys that are on his staff. I don't think that's by accident. No. I think that's on purpose, and as just more voices, younger voices, because Mac's really good about not overcoaching. He said it in one of those interviews that he doesn't want to coach the joy out of the game.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested to see too, because like there's just those moments, where it's heated, it's a timeout, and you have 30 seconds to 45 seconds before a coach sits down in that huddle. Those 30 and 45 seconds where it's just the guys, it's just the players, that's really important. But if they can't figure it out and get it together, that's where I think you can have a Mitch, you can have a Jeff that takes on that role. I'm really interested to see, kind of what becomes of that. And I think it is a huge part of how successful this team can be.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation, Casey, because, You know, all those guys have recently played. A couple of them have recently played for us, especially Mitch. And Mitch is a rising up and coming star as far as a basketball mind.
Mhm.
And you know that, you know, he'll speak up when necessary. I think having the presence of Al Huss certainly helps because there's not many more intense people. Intense in a good way. You
Mm-hmm.
know, he's not a, you know, he's not a spastic tense. He's just a very driven, focused tense. Um, I mean, say tense, but not
I
tense
know
in a
what you
bad
mean.
way, but
Intense.
intense.
Yeah.
Intense.
Yeah.
That's the word I was trying to use. That can help a little bit, but you're right. I mean, having the younger guys on the staff will certainly help maybe bring out some of that. And you know, we'll see. You know, there's going to be moments of stress, and it's probably going to happen sooner rather than later. You know, we mentioned Gonzaga, but you're going to Las Vegas a couple weeks after that, and then a couple weeks after that, you know, you got Nebraska, and that brings a whole another animal to the fight. You know, I like the way the non-conference season sets up because it's not going to be one of those things where you get that long runway. You're going to do one of
Mm.
those things like when we took off from the what island was it where the runway was really short. We had to get that sucker off the ground. It's going to be like that.
Sounds
Where
like
was
is
that,
that
John?
the Bahamas?
was
That sounds like the Bahamas.
St. Thomas, maybe?
I might have been St. Thomas. It was either St. Thomas or Cayman's, but there was the one where I mean the runway was really
Straight up.
short, and it might have been was it. It was the one where we had to leave a bunch of stuff behind because
Mm.
people had bought too much crap, you know, and we were flying with all the fans, so the plane was overloaded. We had to wait forever, and they had to pull stuff off the plane. They had to ship it out FedEx later, and it was all because they had the short runway and they had to get that sucker off the air. That's going to be Creighton season. We got to get that sucker off the air. All the unnecessary baggage we send back with FedEx.
You know, John, I get to.
I don't know why I remembered that.
John, we get to talk every night for about 38 seconds, so we don't have to get to fix the world's problems when you and I are having conversations. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on the way that college athletics is working today. And obviously, basketball is different from football, etc. But I think for guys like you and I that have to fill hours of content every week, that it's nice to have things to constantly be talking about. Do you find that there is something that needs to be fixed in college athletics with the transfer portal or NIL, or you find the way the Wild West works these days?
I'm never going to be a fan of the Wild West because you've got to have some structure. You know, it doesn't work like this anywhere else. And I get that. I mean, college athletics has always operated in a different sphere, whether it comes to how they pick their champion or, you know, but nonstop, unlimited free agency, I don't think is good for anybody. And I'm not here to say that players don't have the right to transfer, but we have gone from the one extreme to the opposite extreme. And that usually leads to a lot of unintended consequences. And then you look at, you know, the money that's in the sport, and I'm glad the players are getting their share. They should have always gotten their share. Yeah, there were scholarships. Yes, there were, you know, extra benefits that were allowed, but it wasn't commensurate with what their value was to the university and to the athletic department, right? I mean, this has been make no bones about it, this has been a big business for decades, and it's only gotten bigger. That said, not having structure, and I try to look at this, not so much from my viewpoint as a broadcaster or as a take maker, but as a fan. I try to look at it as a fan, and I think back, what if this would have been like this when I was growing up? I would have hated it because all of a sudden my best player could just up and disappear and end up on the rivals team, all because, you know, they ended up with a bigger paycheck or a bigger payday. And I don't know if that's necessarily good for the fans who make this all possible. Without them, none of this exists. So I wish there were some guidelines. I wish there were some ways that we could do this where it's fair and equitable, but it also doesn't create these, you know, unwieldy situations. I mean, there's going to be guys that are going to be courted as early as now in the beginning of the season, or someone will see someone play and you know, the intermediaries, the high school coaches, the AAU coaches, whoever represents these kids, even the parents, are going to get the phone calls, already looking ahead towards next year. And I just don't think that's fair to them, given that, they're in the midst of their season and they're trying to, work through things with their teammates. So some kind of guideline is necessary. And I wish I had all of the answers. I used to tout a thing called the scholarship contract. This is back when, before the last 5 years, because we did have a crisis with transfers, where coaches would be very restrictive on, I'll let you transfer, but you can't go here and you can't go here. And that wasn't fair. But where you could sign an agreement and the school had to honor that agreement. And if they didn't honor that agreement, then it counted against their scholarship total, and then they had to let you go. Or if the player wanted to break the agreement, then the next school had to buy them out. It's a very – there's more to it than that, but that was kind of the general gist of it. I don't even know if that's feasible. I don't even know if that's practical, because it's kind of like, when the internet first started and the newspapers were giving their stuff away for free. I could just go to the Omaha.com and I could see every story the Omaha World Herald did. And then they finally figured out 5-10 years later, we should be charging for this. And they started charging for it, and people were like, wait a second, why are you charging for something I used to get for free? And now the newspapers are in a real tough bind. And it's kind of the same way with this. We've gone from 0 to 100. We're at 100. It's going to be hard to dial it back to 50. So I really don't know what it's going to take. The other large concern is what it means for conferences like the Big East, who don't have football and don't have that money coming in, that big money coming in. The Nebraskas and the Iowas, the Ohio States of the world, they're not going to have to worry about that. But the Creightons and the Villanovas are, because they don't have that football money. And
hey, don't disrespect Villanova football like that.
Sorry, Howie Long, did not mean to offend you. But yeah, there's that component of it too, where, I worry about leagues like the Big East. They're fine right now, but what happens, when the money comes in and it's even larger, and the gap between the Big Ten and the SEC, who's already distancing themselves from the Big 12 and the ACC, what happens when that gap just gets wider and wider and wider and wider, and pretty soon you're going back to your donors, you're going back to your J-backers, you're going back to the champion circle, and you said, we got to have more. And they're like, Coach, we're tapped out. There's always a breaking point, because the difference between what you used to ask for in donations and today is what you used to ask for in donations. You got a building. You got something you could put your name on. If a family wanted to donate to a school, they say, okay, that's going to be the Smith Recreation Center, right? When you go for NIL, you get the satisfaction of, I helped buy that player, but then that player's gone in a year or two, and you don't have that permanence of the remembrance of, because donations are part ego too for these people, right? I mean, they're
100%.
not just doing it because they love the school and they want to see the school do well. They also want to see their name in lights. They want to see, the idea of, hey, I built that thing. That's me. I did it. That's and that's going to be a harder ask, especially that the price of those things goes up every year. We're not building a new McDermott Center every 5 years, at least not yet. But we're going to go after new players every single year.
So they put that Bishop facility up, right?
Yeah.
I've often said, John, again, I don't know from experience, but rich people didn't get rich by giving their money away.
Right.
And I've said that about this with NIL. Like, at some point, they're going to go, okay, well, what am I getting? What am I getting for this? Okay, yeah, we have these 3 players, but I mean, you think we have aspirations, a Final Four. There's a lot of programs that, I mean, frankly, don't. They know it's not realistic. And so at some point, I really do believe boosters are going to go, okay, we can only go to so many round of 32s before this is no longer enjoyable for me. And then I have to stop. And so it will be interesting to see. That's why these TV contracts, when I see some stuff online, fans complaining about these TV contracts, whatever, you just have to keep in mind, it's also why you're playing 2 exhibition games and charging admission in some of these places because all that money can be used. So speaking of solving the world's problems, it's not as big of a world problem, but coyotes are a problem, right? I mean, I don't have them in my neighborhood, but I've heard we got a bunch of them coming into town. Looking at this team in years past, like they've always played really fast, like you've alluded to, known to press, and they're trying to get the ball in bounds can cause some havoc. Are there anything else? And I don't know if you even have your game sheet ready yet, John, so I don't want to put you on the spot.
It's getting there.
But
I got it up
right
over here on my screen. I got it
okay.
up.
I know it's extensive, but is there anything else that you would just say to our fans, like, hey, be looking for this, whether it's player or team?
I mean, obviously how fast they play, but it's not only how fast they play, but they're pretty controlled. They don't turn the ball over. You would think a team that, plays as quick as they do would be a little loose with the basketball. And they're really, at least they haven't been. Now, obviously, they got a lot of new pieces. And so, there's going to be an adjustment period for them. But when you look at, what they do, they were first in turnover percentage for a good chunk of the year last year. So it's a team that plays fast, but they would rather play fast and get up a bad shot than play fast and, be loose with the rock. So they're going to get shots up. That's going to put a little stress on the defense. And as we know, defense is probably one of the biggest on the court X's and O's things that Mac is most concerned about, because you don't have the rim stopper anymore. You don't have that guy who can, just protect the rim. So you're kind of relearning on the fly kind of what it was like back when we had Christian and Martine, and maybe hedging out on more ball screens, trying to find whoever that defensive stopper is, whoever that Tyshawn Alexander is. You're trying to find, so you can know, all right, this guy, you're going to be on 40, I'm sorry, he was last year's leading scorer, but the leading scorer, Bruns. Who's gonna be on this guy? Who's gonna do this assignment? And you're also, because they play fast, you're playing a lot of the game in a scramble drill. So you just got to pick up guys on the fly and just kind of know where you're supposed to be. So it's a really unique challenge for an opening game. People unfortunately do a lot of window shopping in sports where they see a certain name, and if they don't attach you, like they ain't playing Florida, so it's not going to grab my attention, like a lot of other schools do. And this is a program that's been on the rise. I mean, they were losing record their first 2 years, and then last year they bust through and they had the winning record, first winning season in 4 years.
Playing a pretty cool building too.
Yeah, it's a pretty good program in a league that I think in the Summit that is getting better. I mean, with Omaha doing what they did last year, I think it's a pretty good league, all things considered. So this is a unique challenge. A team that plays fast, a team that'll be aggressive, and a team theoretically is not going to turn the ball over a lot. And as we know, Creighton's kind of been turnover prone in recent years. I've liked what I've seen in the first 2 games. We've put together, out of 4 halves, 2 good halves of not turning the ball over. But unfortunately, the other 2 halves have not been as good. So if you're giving away possessions, that means you better be more efficient than they are when it comes to shooting.
We're catching up with John Bishop, the voice of the Jays, here on the Roll Jays podcast, brought to you by Pepper Jack's Grill and Pyramid Contractors. John, one thing Casey and I have talked about, all 3 of us have had the luxury of traveling to and with this team, and there's always some great road stories. And Casey was trying to think last night about maybe some of the great stories you guys have shared. Do you have any favorite road stories that you could share with us and not get in trouble for?
No, I mean, the best ones really are more about conversations that you have a chance to have. And now we're flying a little bit differently in that, the team's still going out on the smaller plane, and then the rest of us are going out on one of those 35 passenger or whatever.
I've heard rumors, John, that might be different this year.
It might be. I honestly I guess I haven't talked as much with John about that, but when we were on more of the donor planes, we would kind of, we'd hold court in the back and, talk about crazy things and, and it was kind of fun. You got to know people a lot better because when you're spending, 3-4 hours in the air flying back from the East to the West Coast, you learn a lot about people when you're in close proximity and there ain't a whole lot else to do if you're not watching film. I know Casey, he was always busy breaking down film and stuff. So
see, Jimmy, I worked, man.
He did. He worked. I mean, it was first you had to get to film or to get to tape. You had to download the tape. Someone like Murph or Lou are not going to know, okay, it's not on here. I can't figure this out. So Casey's got to go over. He's got to fix the damn computer. He's got, it's right here. It's right here. The film's right here. And
everybody,
so that was half of his flight.
Thanks. I appreciate that, John.
Everybody tune into the pregame show on Wednesday, and I'll make sure to tell you exactly how much Casey paid John Bishop to get this little fairy tale told on this episode.
Hey, listen, I saw this firsthand. I didn't have to worry about it. I wasn't asking. I was never asking for it. I was always working on my sheets.
Exactly.
But I would always notice it. Someone would always be looking up from their spot and they gesture, and in case we'd have to get up and go, oh, no, it's right here. What do you mean you don't have it? I just downloaded it on your computer. And remember, when we're on the road, especially like a midweek game, everyone's trying to get out as fast as we can. And so you're making sure that you got it recorded. You're making sure that it's saved to the, the hard drive so you can share the hard drive with the external drive and all this other stuff. I mean, I thought I had it rough with Lou breathing down my neck. That happens every year. Is, I have to get certain things with the post game done, and Mac's always the last thing in the post game. And Lou expects me to be ready to go as soon as Mac puts the mic down. It's like, okay, we're ready to leave. I said, no, I still have to sign off, and I have to put all this stuff away. And inevitably, all you'll hear is, Buzz is leaving, Bishop. Where are you? That's why me and Rob Anderson, man, we are a tag team because Rob's trying to get a story written and have it uploaded to the website before the plane takes off. As he's a stickler for details. He wants to make sure that they go Creighton and there's a game story there, because once we get in the air, there's no internet and he can't get it out. So we kind of have to play off of each other, because there are some times where I am actually on time and it's Rob who's trying to work. So then I slow down a little bit. So that way, if someone's going to take the heat, it'll be both of us. It won't just be one of us. But
I always knew you guys pulling some shady stuff, John.
Well, it wasn't shady. We're just kind of looking out for each other, And then of course, and the worst part is you get done, you get there. Well, everyone else is on the bus, and because of all the food that we have piled up on the bus, it takes up like 4 extra seats, and so there's no place to sit. I've spent bus trips standing up, balancing stuff or having pizza boxes all over the place. And it's crazy. And now, we get boosters that travel with us. So even more seats are taken up. And I mean, we're almost to the point where we need 2 buses.
Well, in the past at home games, you probably could have just taken your headset off and heard me from the booth. Stop talking. I'm ready to go.
I'm telling you, man, Iowa State, it was terrible. So I'm working solo.
Hey, I didn't have to worry about it this year.
Yeah, it's true.
Talk as long as you want, buddy.
Yeah. But for some reason, for an Iowa State exhibition, they must have brought 90% of their media. And so it was a 40-minute long wait for an exhibition post-game show. And I'm sitting here by myself filling time. Meanwhile, trying not to be spoiled by the result of a certain football game that was going on, because I was going to try to get home and watch it without being spoiled. That didn't happen. But yeah, I just, there's the logistics of just getting out of places is insane. The getting there is fine. It's the getting out.
Xavier always comes to mind.
And then inevitably there's gonna be a plane that doesn't work, and then we're all sitting in there in the FBO, and we're just like,
first world problems.
Oh my God!
But
I know,
let me say this, I feel you though, John. It does get frustrating. But as I was trying to think about this with you coming on, I really couldn't think of like a specific story, but I do remember many nights on the road at the restaurant, and we'd sit together or we'd be at a table, and just occasionally you'd get a table with some of the players, and some of the conversations that you get to have in those moments, that's like what I miss the most.
Yeah.
Is that's when you get to know these guys. And I don't know why I remember just hearing you telling them sports stories, and like, I don't know, it's just maybe just the voice, the radio voice, but they would listen and they would actually like want to hear the story
Would
because of your
they?
telling it.
I always thought I was boring them because I never wanted to be that guy. I loved my grandpa to death, but he would be the guy. I would hear the same story about the cat who grew up on the farm, like every third time I was with
Yeah.
him. So I never wanted to be that guy. Usually those came about because we would get into a town like on a Tuesday or something, and there'd be a Big East game. So I'd have it on my phone, or Casey would have it on his phones. People would have it on their phones, or
That's a
maybe we
good
would have
call.
it in there. And then you'd see something happen, or and you go, "Oh, I remember that one dude. Yeah, yeah, yeah." And then you get into the stories, and some of the guys would listen. There'd be other guys who were just like, put their beats back on, keep their head down. It's like, I don't want to hear the old guy talk anymore. He's out of his mind. It's always fascinating to me, and it reminds me of how out of touch. I've got two boys who are basically the age of our guys, or at least they were. I guess now they're almost aging out of that, and it makes me realize how little I know about this generation, right?
Mm.
Because some of the things they talk about, obviously when I was their age, we didn't have these things.
Oh yeah.
And so we had to relate differently. But now, everyone's about, hey, did you see this on Instagram, or did you see this, and all this other stuff? And I realize how out of touch I am, because these kids are now, they're 2 generations behind me now, because I mean the millennials have aged out, so I'm like 2 generations behind, and I feel really old.
Wow. Is there anybody that really stands out to you, former player, that I don't know, that was just fun? Like, we're talking these stories like that you just really, really memorable for you.
I'll tell you who was really interesting was Mo Watson.
Hmm.
You know, Wap would sit down. He would talk about family things and stuff like that, and it was kind of weird. I don't want to say he was isolated or distant from his teammates, because he wasn't, but there'd be times where he'd be sitting close by, and he'd ask you questions about stuff, because he was a Philly kid and he didn't relate to country folk like me. He was really interesting. um, Going back, Cole Huff was a real interesting dude. I got to meet his mom. When we were on one of those island trips. Really wonderful, wonderful lady. And Cole was a great dude. And now I think he's still right now. I think he's still in the media somewhere. Those are a couple of guys that stand out. Obviously, Mitch. I mean, Mitch is tremendous. I'm so glad he's around the team. We got a thing going all the time. You might notice every once in a while, Mitch will look over at me and he's doing this thing. It's because we razz each other about our favorite football teams, and with him, it's always about when people play the Chiefs, they get shaky, because Mahomes, he's Mr. Steady. So occasionally you might see us do these gestures between each other, because he's talking about how the Chiefs never panic. They're always rock solid. But yeah, Mitch was always awesome too, and Steven, from last year. Steven, just tremendous young man, just mature beyond his years. And maybe getting married, at such a young age does that to you. But we've had, that's the one thing about Creighton. I don't even know if I can count on 2 or 3 fingers the number of guys who are just like, I'm really not fond of that person. I mean, we have always been good, not only about getting good basketball players, but good people, just really good people. And that all comes from the top. I mean, Mac has said many times, my days of trying to, fit our culture around a bad personality just because this guy's a bad basketball player. I can't do that. And I think that helps more than people realize. Because can you win with people who, are maybe a little sketchy personality wise, but are just super
Yeah.
talented? You can. It's been done, but
But it's not fun.
But it's not fun, and it's harder to do. It's harder to do
Yep.
than you think. But when you have good people around you that can take to, constructive friend criticism and can, be like wanting to be together, it makes the job a whole lot easier. And for people like me, it makes it a lot more enjoyable. It's a lot more enjoyable to do the post game interviews with people who, are happy to be there and appreciate, the job that you do. And that's harder and harder to come by, because let's face it, a lot of kids these days don't even know what the radio is.
Yeah. That's why this podcast today specifically has finally been fun for me, because you've been here, John, because I'm having to just me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Jimmy can be a handful.
It's brutal.
It's so bad.
Hey, John, we'll get you out of this, because this went a lot longer than any of us have participated, and I hate even cutting it this short. But who is a guy that the first time you sat down with him and he got done with his first interview and you went, oof, coaching staff probably is not going to let him come back out here again. And then by the time that they're done at Creighton, was a polished interviewee by the time you got done talking to him?
I don't know if Marcus Zagorowski was ever polished.
Okay. I
don't know if
we've had him on this show. We understand where you're going. With this.
Listen, and I've heard him. He's like, where was that dude, man? When we were on the radio. But sometimes you're not great in those moments, because you've just come off the floor, and the way you compete, you're not thinking about what you look like or what you sound like in the media, because you don't care. And that's not a bad thing. That's just I just came off the floor. I'm already thinking about the next game, or I'm thinking about what I should have done differently here, done differently there. Guys who have gotten, well, the most recent example is Kalk. Kalk was very, just kind of
wouldn't talk.
Yeah, he wouldn't talk that much, and so it took a little bit to get out of him, but. Last year, it was really the last couple of years, but last year I could see that he was trying really hard to take in everything that was happening, not just because he was having a great season.
We talked about that on the radio.
Yeah, not just because, he knew it was his last year, but how much he wanted to just soak it all in, because he knows I'm never going to have it this good again, in terms of, just being able to hoop, right? There was a class component, but it's a different world. And I'm sure he's experiencing that now, where this is a job and the pressure has gone way, way up. Now, I think he's going to handle it fine.
Yeah, he's got it pretty good right now.
Yeah, he does have it good. He played awful good. Plus, he's got that rock. He's got Rachel, and soon, another member, another mouth to feed. That's going to, change things for him.
Hopefully, with this poor man's salary, he can manage.
Yeah, I think he'll be all right. But yeah, I noticed that out of Kalk last year, where he was like, he was still a lot of all shucks, right? But you could tell he was really trying to embrace every moment, and you could tell he didn't want it to end, because he knew, I'm living the best world. And that's really hard. I think back, and I was never a college athlete, but I think back to those days and those formative years growing up, and not having that. And, you just assume it's never going to end. And then all of a sudden it's gone, and you realize, man, I wish I would have enjoyed it more when it happened. I enjoyed it, but I wish I would have taken it in a little bit more. And that just comes with being young. When you're young, you don't have perspective of time. But I could see that a little bit in Ryan last year. And so I hope he got as much out of it as I think he did, because I really saw him working at it.
Well, we hope everybody got as much out of this podcast as they could have, and
Probably
I think
didn't. We
I
didn't
think we're
even talk
I
about the
did.
damn team. I mean, it's just like, what is his team? We didn't even say Josh Dix's name. I mean,
I think we're just
Fedor,
gonna name.
Hudson?
I think we're just gonna name this this episode the John and Casey Love Fest. As much as you guys just kept giving each other
I mean,
all your flowers you
listen,
possibly could.
Casey worked his ass off.
Oh God, here we go.
And people
They
and
finished.
see, because people don't appreciate, there's okay, you got your head coach and you got your players and the assistants, they get their flowers, and the Rob Andersons, they get their flowers because they're so damn good at their job. But then there's the other people, like me, like Casey, the GAs, the manages, hell, even the manages get more flowers than we do. And we got to look out for each other, right? Because most of the time, people just kind of take us for granted, and they look at us as like, you're holding up the bus. We need to be on the plane right now.
Right.
You guys are out there. So,
I think it's important to point out that you're the only person that's ever said anything nice about Casey on this podcast. I think that is important. I think that is important to point out. John,
But
this is a tough world. That's the other thing I love about this organization is, especially when you have people like Lou in it, it's kind of like
random strays.
It's kind of like being in The Sopranos, right? When Tony,
wouldn't that be more like Derek Kellogg than Lou?
well, maybe. I mean, Derek may have been in a few Satriales in his day, but it's a lot of busting balls, right? I mean, and if you don't have the skin for it, you will get sliced to pieces. So
and you haven't even mentioned number one, John McHugh.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's number one buster.
absolutely. Yes, he is. Oh, he is
Ruthless.
Trying to think of who he would be.
I tell
The
him all the
Sopranos.
time, who needs enemies with friends like you? That is
Exactly.
100% John McHugh.
We sat down. We were at the Champion Circle function a few weeks ago. Where they have the dinner on the court after practice, and the boosters get to come and watch practice. And I was at the table with McHugh, and for the first time in 13 years, we're sitting around. We had some boosters at the table, and people were talking. There's this one wonderful lady who was like complimenting me. She loves my broadcast, and my wife's sitting there going, "You don't know the half of it. He's just the worst person to be with." And McHugh actually said, of all the people around, John gives me the least amount of resistance. He's so easy to work with, and I'm like, whoa. A compliment from John McHugh. This is rare because I guarantee you the next time I text him asking some question, I'm going to get some smart aleck response back as if to imply that I should have known this information already, or why didn't you check your teamworks, or whatever. So I was almost taken aback. It was like, whoa, this is like getting a compliment from the Pope.
Well,
I love that.
John, it wouldn't be you and I doing something over StreamYard unless I said this podcast was good, and indeed it was. So
indeed it was. Hey, your mic's not overmodulated this time.
I still have no idea what happened there, but hey, buddy,
that was the scariest thing, because there for a fleeting second I thought,
I have to do this by myself.
Post-game show all by myself because Jimmy can't figure out his damn microphone.
I would have driven as fast as I could to a different studio as quickly as I could have.
No,
I would have never left you out on.
What game was that anyway? That was Northern Iowa. That was a terrible football game. No one cared.
Exactly. I'm surprised anybody heard it, if I'm being honest.
They probably didn't.
Yeah. Hey, buddy, I appreciate you doing this with us. You can catch John on all of the Creighton's broadcasts, all of Creighton's and basketball broadcasts on 1620 The Zone all year long. And
Come
also
back, John. Come back.
on
This
the
is a lot of
postgame
fun.
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to come back. It makes it more fun when you have intelligent basketball people like Casey on this conversation.
Yeah,
I've been
someone's
trying
gotta
to
hold
tell
up-
people.
Someone's got to hold this thing up.
I'm just here to be a pretty face, man. That's all it is. That's John Bishop, the voice of the Jays. This has been the Roll Jays podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Big East Energy. And thanks to Pepper Jack's Grill and Pyramid Contractors for sponsoring us. We'll talk to you next time.